This year, my parents forgot my birthday. Again. For the fifth time in a row. At this point, I should have been used to it. I told myself I didn't care. That I didn't need validation. That I was too old for candles and calls and happy birthday texts. But the truth? Some part of me still hoped. Deep, stupid, vulnerable hope that maybe this year they'd remember. Maybe this year I wouldn't have to pretend like it didn't matter. But nope. Just another Tuesday. I went through the motions like always. Got up. Answered emails. Sat through Zoom meetings where I couldn't even pretend to pay attention. My phone sat face up on my desk the entire day silent. Not a ping. Not a single thinking of you, or even a lazy emoji from anyone in my family. By lunchtime, I already knew how the day was going to end, but it didn't stop the slow pit in my stomach from forming. My coworkers, people I barely knew outside of past the coffee, noticed I seemed off. One of them, Jenna, asked if I was okay. When I shrugged it off, she reappeared 20 minutes later with a sad little grocery store cupcake and a match to use as a candle. "You don't deserve to be ignored," she said. I almost cried right there. It was the most anyone had done for me that day, and somehow, that tiny act of kindness hit harder than all the birthdays my family had overlooked combined. That cupcake made me feel more seen than the people who raised me. I went home that night, sat on my couch with a glass of cheap wine, and stared at the ceiling in the dark. Not dramatic. Just numb. Just tired of the same pattern repeating over and over like a movie I'd already seen too many times. And then 2 weeks later, everything snapped. It was my younger sister Tessa's 16th birthday. The kind of milestone you can't scroll past on social media without seeing cake explosions and balloon arches. My parents? Oh, they went all in. They threw her a massive party. There was a private event space, a catered dinner, and gold balloons everywhere. A DJ, photographers. A freaking chocolate fountain. The Instagram stories were relentless, dozens of people reposting videos of her twirling in a sparkly dress while everyone cheered. At first, I wasn't planning to go. I knew what kind of night it would be, and I wasn't interested in clapping for a family who didn't even text me on my own birthday. But Tessa called me herself the night before. She sounded so excited, so genuinely happy. "Please come," she said. "It would mean so much if you were there." And Tessa? She was never the problem. We were always close. I was the one who helped her with math when no one else could. The one who taught her to ride a bike when our dad was too busy watching football. She wasn't responsible for the way they treated me. So I caved. The party was unreal. It looked like something straight off a Pinterest board. Glitter and flowers everywhere. People in cocktail dresses and heels. It wasn't just a birthday party, it was a royal coronation. I stayed toward the back, watching it unfold like I was a guest in someone else's dream. My parents looked radiant, beaming. My mom wore pearls. My dad worked the room like a proud CEO giving a TED talk about his perfect daughter. And then, the moment that snapped something in me. My dad tapped his glass and got the whole room quiet. He gave a speech, emotional, glowing. Talked about how proud they were. About how Tessa was everything they could have hoped for in a daughter. "We wanted to give you something that shows just how much we believe in you," he said, smiling. And my mom stepped forward with car keys. "It's parked outside, sweetheart." The room erupted. Tessa gasped, teared up, screamed. Everyone cheered. The DJ queued up an upbeat pop track. And I just stood there, frozen, clapping like a mannequin with a knife in its back. Because 2 weeks earlier, I didn't even get a text. Not a card. Not a call. Not a sorry. Work got busy. Nothing. And now they were giving her a car. Afterward, Tessa came up to me and hugged me so tight. Can you believe it? I didn't expect this at all. I forced a smile. "It's amazing. You deserve it." And she did. But that didn't stop the ache in my chest when I got into my own 12-year-old Civic and drove home in silence. I didn't even turn on the radio. Just gripped the steering wheel, jaw clenched, trying not to let the tears fall until I was inside. It wasn't about the car, or the party, or even the speech. It was about what it meant. That when they thought of Tessa, they thought of celebration, of joy, of worth showing up for. When did they think of me? They didn't. That night, I made a decision. No more hoping. No more waiting. If they didn't remember my birthday for 5 years in a row, then they didn't deserve to be in the version of my life I was building. I was done being the forgotten child. When you grow up as the other child, you don't realize it right away. It creeps in. At first, it's little things. Like how your sister's doodles get framed on the fridge, but your A+ math test gets tossed in a drawer. Or how she gets dropped off at ballet class like royalty while you're told to walk to piano practice because it's just down the street. Tessa was the golden child. Everyone knew it. Even her. And the thing is, I never hated her for it. She didn't ask to be put on a pedestal. But from the beginning, everything she did seemed to sparkle in our parents' eyes. She could trip over her own feet, and they'd laugh like she'd invented slapstick. I could win a writing competition, and they'd ask, "That's nice, but what did Tessa get?" She was bubbly, beautiful, and charming. She had this natural glow that drew people in. Me? I was the quiet one, the smart one, the reliable one, the invisible one. I was the kid you could count on to clean up, not the one you'd ever throw a party for. It's hard to explain how that affects you over time. It's not about one big moment. It's thousands of small cuts. Like the time in 7th grade when I stayed up all night crafting a science fair project that won first place, and my parents couldn't come because they were at Tessa's dance recital. Or when I got into advanced math a year early, and my dad just said, "Well, your sister's not a numbers person. She's creative." It wasn't that they were cruel. They were just selective with their affection. Tessa got the attention. I got the responsibility. When we got older, it got more obvious. Tessa got a new phone for her birthday, the latest model. I got a gift card. She got concert tickets and dinner out. I got a "we'll do something next week" that never came. I told myself I didn't care. I really tried not to. But every time I saw that look in their eyes when she walked in the room, that warm, immediate pride, I felt smaller. Like no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried, I would never be the first one they thought of. I'd never be the one they celebrated. Only the one they relied on, called in emergencies, used as a free tutor, tech support, or emotional dumping ground when things got tense at home. And every time I pushed those feelings down, they stacked up, one on top of the other, until I couldn't ignore them anymore. The car thing was just the final blow. But the truth? That night in the parking lot, sitting in my car, staring through the windshield at nothing, was a long time coming. Because while my parents forgot 5 birthdays in a row, I'd been forgetting something too myself. I'd been so focused on keeping the peace, on being useful, on staying low maintenance, that I didn't notice how much of my voice I'd buried. I stopped speaking up because every time I did, it felt like I was making things harder for everyone else. That's what being in the shadow does to you. You stop asking, stop expecting, stop hoping. And after the party, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Something had to change. That night, I sat down and wrote everything I'd never said, not to send, just to get it out. Pages of words spilled out of me. The times I'd felt overlooked. The birthdays. The silences. The ache of watching them pour love into someone else while I stood there holding the bucket. And when I finished, I didn't feel bitter. I felt clear. This wasn't about punishing them. It wasn't even about confronting them. It was about finally stepping out of the role they gave me. Not the quiet one. Not the responsible one. Not the afterthought. Just me. Me, on my own terms. I am learning how to speak up, not to beg for attention, but because I deserve to be heard. And stepping out of the shadow? It didn't mean dragging anyone down. It just meant turning toward the light for the first time and realizing it had always been waiting. The thing about pulling away from your family is that no one ever tells you how much it hurts, even when it's the right thing. There's this fantasy we cling to when we're younger, that if you're a good kid, if you stay quiet, work hard, don't cause trouble, love them even when it's hard, that they'll see you. Eventually, that one day, they'll wake up and go, "Wow, we've been so unfair. Thank you for holding everything together." But that day never comes. At least, it didn't for me. So I stopped waiting. And when I made that decision, to stop calling, to stop showing up for holidays, to stop pretending everything was fine, it wasn't some angry mic drop moment. There was no screaming, "No, I'm done with this family" speech. It was quiet. It was me, choosing to remove myself from a conversation where no one noticed I was even speaking. I stopped responding to texts that only came when they needed something. I muted the group chat that always seemed to accidentally leave me out of plans. I skipped the family reunion and didn't send an excuse. And at first, it felt like guilt, like I was being petty, like I was betraying some sacred blood bond. I kept thinking, what if something happens? What if they think I don't care? But the truth was, they already acted like I didn't exist. And I was just matching the energy they'd been giving me for years. I didn't do it to hurt them. I did it to stop hurting myself. The longer I stayed close, the more I felt like I was bleeding from a wound they didn't even believe existed. Like I was setting myself on fire just to keep the family room warm. I started filling my calendar with people who actually saw me. Friends who asked how I was doing and actually waited for an answer. Coworkers who remembered my birthday. A roommate noticed when I was spiraling and slid a plate of warm cookies under my door without saying a word. I found warmth outside the house I grew up in. Slowly, I started to heal. I journaled more. Took walks without headphones. Started therapy, something I used to think was only for people with real trauma. But my therapist said something that shifted everything. Emotional neglect doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers so quietly for so long that you forget it's not normal. That hit me like a freight train. Because that was my life, a long, quiet erosion. No big blow-ups. Just years of being forgotten in the background while Tessa got the spotlight. Years of hearing, "You're so mature for your age," which just meant, "Thanks for raising yourself." Cutting them off wasn't a punishment. It was an act of self-respect. It was me saying, "I'm not auditioning anymore. I'm not performing for praise you're never going to give. I'm not contorting myself into someone more convenient, more quiet, more forgettable. I'm done shrinking." And sure, the silence was uncomfortable at first. There were days I'd pick up my phone and stare at their names and my contacts, fingers hovering like I was about to call. But then I'd remember the 5 missed birthdays, the photos from Tessa's party, the way no one ever asked if I was okay. And I put the phone down. The truth is, you don't need to hate someone to outgrow them. You don't need a dramatic reason to walk away from relationships that only take. You just have to love yourself more than the idea of being loved by people who never learned how. And once you do, there's no going back. It had been over half a year since I'd last spoken to my parents when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. Dad. It stopped me cold. I was at the grocery store, of all places, standing in front of the frozen pizza aisle, staring blankly at a row of cardboard boxes, when the screen flashed. For a moment, I thought I imagined it. I hadn't blocked them. I just faded out. I wasn't sure they even noticed. They had. I let it ring. Didn't pick up. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my wallet into the cart. He left a voicemail. I listened to it that night with the lights off, curled up on the edge of my bed like the kid I used to be, the one who waited for his parents to remember he existed. "Hey, it's Dad. We haven't heard from you in a while. Your mom's been a little upset. Tessa said you've been distant. Just wanted to check in. Call us, okay." That was it. No mention of missing my birthday. No apology. No why. Just a vague, half-hearted request like I had pulled away for no reason. But the version of me they were calling didn't exist anymore. Because in the time I'd been away, I'd grown. Not taller, not louder, but stronger. I wasn't waiting at the window anymore, hoping they'd show up with balloons or even just basic acknowledgement. I wasn't performing emotional labor for people who only remembered I existed when it was convenient. Still, a part of me wanted answers. Closure. Something. So I agreed to meet them. Neutral ground. Public. A small, quiet cafe tucked off a side street where no one would raise their voice and I could leave whenever I wanted. I wore my favorite jacket. Did my hair. Not because I wanted to impress them, but because I wanted to walk in fully as myself, the self they never got to know. My mom looked up when I walked in. Her smile was that tight, rehearsed kind. The one you use in front of distant relatives at a funeral. Dad hugged me like I was a coworker he hadn't seen since a layoff. We sat. Talked. Surface-level stuff. My job. Rent prices. The weather. Then, my mom said the thing I knew was coming. "We've noticed you've been distant." I nodded. "Yeah, I have." "Is this because of the party?" she asked. Like it was a one-time thing. A blip. A misunderstanding. I paused. Sipped my coffee. No. It's because of the years that led up to it. The birthdays forgotten. The phone calls were missed. The silence that always followed when I needed you most. She didn't respond at first. She looked uncomfortable, like I'd spoken in a language she hadn't studied. My dad finally said, "We didn't realize it hurt you so much." And that's the problem. They didn't realize. Because they never asked. Never looked close enough to see the cracks they helped carve. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just spoke plainly, for the first time in my life. I've always been the quiet one. The strong one. The one who didn't need much. But I did need something. And you weren't there. The silence between us was loud. Not hostile. Just honest. Eventually, my mom said, "We're sorry." Not with tears. Not with a grand gesture. Just a small, stiff phrase dropped into a conversation that had already happened too late. And I realized something important at that moment. I wasn't here to fix anything. I wasn't hoping they'd break down and beg. I wasn't here for a redemption arc. I was there because I owed myself the closure. Because I had changed, deeply, quietly, radically. And the version of me sitting across from them wasn't waiting for their permission to feel whole. My birthday came around again. Full circle. It's been 1 year since the last time I sat on my couch in silence, staring at my phone, waiting for people to remember I existed. But this time, there was no dread, no pit in my stomach, no screen glows with hope and disappointment. Because this time I planned it. Not for them. Not to prove a point. Not even as revenge. Just for me. I took the day off work. Not because I had plans yet, but because I wanted to choose how I spent my time. That alone was a gift. Not being on someone else's clock. not having to make excuses for why I wanted to feel important for one day. I made pancakes in the morning. Thick, fluffy, overdone with toppings, whipped cream, berries, chocolate chips, zero regrets. I danced around my kitchen in socks to a playlist I had made the night before called Happy Birthday to Me, You Forgetful Jerks. It was aggressive and perfect. And then around 11 a.m., the doorbell rang. 3 of my friends stood there, Marcy, Lucas, and Danny, holding balloons, coffee, and a little paper crown from the party store that said Birthday Royalty. I lost it. Not dramatically, just quietly. I laughed too hard. Hugged too long. The part of me that used to flinch at surprises just let go. We spent the entire afternoon in my living room, ordering takeout, watching awful rom-coms, and playing board games like we were 12 again. They brought me gifts, none expensive, all thoughtful. A mug that said, Main Character Energy. A tote bag that said, Forgotten but Thriving. A framed Polaroid of us from last summer when we'd crashed a wedding reception by accident and danced like we belonged there. At some point, Marcy disappeared into the kitchen and came back with a cake. Not a fancy one. Box mix. The icing is a little lopsided. But it said, to the loudest quiet kid we know, happy freaking birthday. And I teared up, right there in front of everyone. Not because of the cake, but because it was the first time I felt like my birthday wasn't a burden. No guilt. No complicated feelings. No hollow texts from people who only remembered when it was convenient. Just joy. And yeah, later that night, I did get a text from my mom. Happy birthday. Hope it was a good one. No call. No apology for all the ones she'd missed. Just a sentence sent into the void. But this time, I didn't panic about what to say. I didn't spiral into overthinking or wonder if I should be grateful just to be acknowledged. I just looked at the message and moved on. Because that day, I'd already been seen, celebrated, and loved, fully and without conditions, by the people I chose to keep close. That's when it clicked. You don't have to keep chasing the people who forget you. You can build a world around the ones who remember without being reminded. And Tessa? She came by the next day, quiet, sheepish, holding a slice of cake from her place and a handwritten note that just said, I'm sorry for not noticing. I see you now. We sat on my porch and talked for hours. About growing up. About how we were both raised in a house that picked favorites without realizing the damage. She told me she was learning, trying, that she wanted to show up for me the way I'd always shown up for her. And for once, I believed her. I kept her note. It's on my fridge next to the group photo of me and my friends in birthday hats. It doesn't erase the years of being forgotten, but it proves something else. You can stop waiting. You can start again. And you can still be loved, louder, better, and more completely than you ever were before. It's been over a year now. A year passed since I stopped waiting. Since I stopped asking. Since I stopped needing love to look like it used to. And you know what? It's been the most peaceful year of my life. My parents still reach out sometimes. Not often. Just enough to remind me they exist, like little pings from a planet I no longer orbit. A forwarded meme here, a happy holidays text there. Nothing deep. Nothing honest. Nothing that ever says, we see you now. And I've come to terms with something that used to haunt me. They may never understand what they did. Not fully. Not in the way I wished they would. They might never sit down and connect the dots between the birthdays missed and the child who faded from their lives in quiet resignation. They may never say, we were wrong. They may never even think they were. And that used to feel like failure. Like, if I couldn't get them to understand, then maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I really was the dramatic one. The sensitive one. The one who should have just gotten over it. But now I know better. I know that understanding doesn't always come from the people who hurt you. Sometimes it comes from you. From the day you finally look in the mirror and say, I deserve better. And I still do. From the moment you realize your worth was never tied to how loudly people clapped when you entered the room. It was always there. Quiet. Unshakable. Just waiting for you to come home to it. And I have. I've come home to myself. I've built a life around people who show up. Not perfectly, but consistently. Friends text me on random Tuesdays just to say they're proud. A partner who asks about my day and listens. People who don't need reminders to care because caring is just who they are. My fridge is covered in Polaroids now. Messy, beautiful, real moments. Game nights. Spontaneous road trips. A photo of me holding my birthday cake, smiling like someone who finally knows he's allowed to take up space. And next to those photos, a note. The one Tessa wrote. I see you now. I keep it there not because I need the reminder, but because it represents something rare, someone who chose to learn. We talk more now. Not every day, but when we do, it feels honest. She's growing, too. We're both learning what it means to love without competition, without conditions, without scorekeeping. And as for my parents, I don't hate them. I don't even resent them. I just let them stay where they are, on the periphery, because healing doesn't always end with a hug and a family photo. Sometimes, healing looks like drawing a boundary and keeping it. Sometimes, it means accepting that closure doesn't come from the apology. It comes from your decision to live well anyway. They may never understand what they did, but I finally understand what I deserve. And I'm not giving that up for anyone.